Busch McBusch 400.
Yeah, it's a Buschy McBusch 400, and we're here. It's fast cars, fast money. We're gonna break this crazy race theme slate down for you guys. It's just me, Coop, here. What's going on, Coop?
Hey, how are you, Andrew?
Oh, I'm doing good. We just got done recording our truck video. So if you haven't checked that out, it should be up live now on our YouTube channel. So once you get through watching this one, feel free to hop over and watch our truck video breakdown and kind of our thoughts on who we like there. But as always, starting with some housekeeping. We'll be posting the spreadsheet over on Twitter. It's at FastCarsFM. Feel free to go give us a follow over there. We'll interact with you if you have any lineup questions or just want an opinion on your line or any questions. You can drop them down in the comments for the video too. Like whatever way, we'll make sure that we get back to you before the lineups lock, and we'll be posting any updates as far as like, hey, maybe a driver just got sent to the back of the field because he failed inspection. Are we still playing him, or are we getting off of him? Just little things like that. But let's look at the preview and kind of initial thoughts for how Coop and I are approaching this race. So last week was Talladega, and we had a couple of big name drivers wreck out or have mechanical problems. So with no practice in qualifying, though, that means that those drivers are going to be starting deeper in the field based off of the formula that we use. So that means there's going to be a lot of chalky plays. A lot of these drivers are priced up because of the place differential points that they offer. So you kind of have to pick, between the bunch, which ones you want to go with. But we're back to kind of the cookie cutter 1.5, D-shaped oval track, these 1.5 miles. So you really want to look at probably Las Vegas, Atlanta, maybe even a Homestead earlier this year, figure out who ran well on those tracks and correlate that over to who you think might run well at Kansas this weekend. Dominators are going to be back in play. I know last week at Talladega was just try to jam as many place differential plays in your lineup as possible and hope for the big one. But with some of these better drivers starting further in the field, this is at least what I'm doing. I'm going to try to find that right balance of the dominators versus a PD play. And maybe some of these guys offer both. But when I'm building my lines, I really want to play that narrative out in my head of, okay, who's going to lead the early part of the race up until that competition caution? Okay, I think it's going to be driver A. And then at that competition caution, I think maybe driver B is going to be in the equation. And then you just kind of play that story out in your head if you look at your line. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I don't know, Coop, do you have any other initial thoughts before we kind of look at these drivers specifically?
We'll run through it because the starting positions are all jacked up from Talladega, and we've got a lot of interesting plays this week.
All right, so I guess we'll start with the kind of the most expensive guys, and by no surprise, it's a lot of the drivers that had trouble at Talladega and kind of wrecked out or had mechanical problems. So why don't we start with you, Coop? Who do you like out of the 10K plus range?
I like Kyle Larson. He's starting the furthest back out of all of the racers that you generally see that are the highest price. With that being said, I do think he may come in kind of expensive this week just because of how great he's been at mile-and-a-half tracks. And I think that a lot of these other drivers offer the same exact upside all the way. Joey Logano, same thing. I don't think he'll be as high-owned, actually. And I think he's a great pivot off of the other guys in this range like Larson, Hamlin, Truex. And speaking of Hamlin and Truex, those are probably my two favorite plays in this range. These two drivers have been awesome this year. And I also think that they're not starting 32nd, 29th, 25th. If you're 20th and above, I really do think by the end of stage one, they can be up at the front and leading laps. I think they'll be able to get up a little quicker than the other drivers. And I think even Truex especially, I think that he could shoot up pretty quick if they hit the setup right. And it could be, somebody out of this 10,000 plus range that is also going to get you dominator points. But really, you can say that for any of these drivers. the two, the two that I'm least interested in, however, I still really like, and it's a great pivot off of the other drivers, is Elliott and Bowman. Elliott just really hasn't figured it out quite yet this year. But Hendricks as a whole has had a really good team. And I think he's right there. And when it clicks, I think it'll definitely click. And then Bowman, I just think that I'd rather have Truex if I'm paying for Bowman. That's the only reason I'm a little lower on him. But again, another great pivot. I don't think he'll be that high owned, and he could easily outscore any of these other drivers in this range. So really interesting 10,000 plus K range this week. Everybody starting 15th back, and all of them very good, very experienced drivers that could score you a ton of points this week if they get up there quick, get the place differential, and lead you laps.
Yeah, the ownership is going to be interesting at this range. I think Kyle Larson, yeah, he is the most expensive, but he has the most upside, starting 32nd. So I think a lot of people in these contests are probably going to be starting with him. So like Coop said, maybe a Truex or a Hamlin, or maybe even Bowman or Logano might come in lower owned. And if like Larson could wreck, he could have issues, he could miss the setup like he did earlier in the year. And if he doesn't deliver at that price tag, that's really going to hurt a lot of lines, especially if people are paying all the way up for that price. But I still think Larson's the best play. With that being said, in this range, but if I can get a Larson and pair him with maybe a Truex or a Hamlin, like Cooper was saying too, those three drivers have really separated themselves, I feel like, from the field this year. Those are the guys I feel the most confident leading laps, and still getting you some good place differential points as well. But if they're starting further back in the field, you have to pair them, at least I think you do. I think you have to pair them with someone that's going to lead the early part of the race before maybe that powerhouse name, takes over, whether that's, at the end of stage 1 or somewhere in stage 2, or really any point in the race. And a couple drivers that have a good opportunity to do that are priced in this, 8 to 9K range. Brad Keselowski just won Talladega last week. So does that correlate to Kansas? Probably not. But Keselowski hasn't been a slouch at all this year. I mean, he hasn't been as consistent as like a Truex or a Hamlin, like up front, and just like that upfront presence. But he's controlling the restart. He has the best opportunity to lead all the way up until that competition caution. So I'm kind of interested there. But if he misses the setup for whatever reason, it's really going to hurt your line. Ryan Blaney is another guy that starts 7th, so the chances of him getting up there early aren't as high as like a Keselowski or even like a Harvick or a William Byron, but they're there. He'll probably get to the front before Larson does, starting all the way back in 32nd. But another good place differential play would just be Kurt Busch. If you don't want to pay up for that place differential, with some of those more expensive guys like Kurt Busch, he's not going to lead you any laps, but he starts 28th and he usually finishes anywhere around 8th to 12th. So that's still going to be a good payday there. And then Kevin Harvick's interesting. I don't know. I mean, usually Harvick's a guy that you feel really confident in, and his price tag's pretty cheap this week. But if you just look at Harvick, especially on the 1.5s earlier this year, Stewart Haas as a whole hasn't really been showing up. So, if I'm trying to figure out who the early dominator is going to be, I probably am going to feel the best about Keselowski and Byron versus a Harvick before some of those, more expensive guys take over. But do you like any of these guys, Coop, in this range, or are you trying to pair an early lap leader as well? Or are you focusing more on kind of those top range guys with the thought of, hey, I know they're going to take over the race, so getting a guy that leads for, 20 laps or so isn't really too relevant to me?
Well, this is where I don't know yet. I've got a couple different thoughts, and actually one of them just came to me now while you were talking. And when you said you got to think about the narrative of what you think is going to happen in the race and who's going to take the early lead, if you decide to go the route of pairing a dominator with an early dominator with the drivers we were talking about earlier, I really like Byron. I think that if you're going to start one of the front two drivers on any given day, I just really like Byron and the speed that he's shown this year. Not to say that Keselowski hasn't had it, and I was thrilled to see Keselowski win Talladega last week. I think that was awesome. But here's another narrative that I just thought of as you were talking. Keselowski's starting first, and then there's potential. He's got McDowell behind him, right? Is McDowell in third?
Yeah, I think he's. Let me see. Yeah, McDowell starts third, so he'll be.
And McDowell,
and usually with this package, it's the pusher that matters more.
Right, and McDowell, I wouldn't typically think is a great pusher, but then you got DiBenedetto and Blaney right there too, and that's a line of Fords that, if they push well, they could really give Keselowski a great start. So I think that helps Keselowski. Whether that's how it pans out or whether Byron takes over early, I mean, that you got to figure out what that narrative's going to be. Me, I probably lean slightly more towards the Byron route. He's a little cheaper too and gives you a little salary relief. The driver that I actually like in this range the most is Kurt Busch. Kurt is, again, a driver that should be in the top 10 at the end of the race. And again, he's very similar to those drivers at the very top. He just doesn't have – he's got the same finishing potential. Maybe not a top 3, but he's got a top 10 finishing potential. He just probably doesn't have he's probably not going to be a lap leader. So he doesn't have that upside, but as far as the place differential, he's got it, and he's got it in spades. So I really like Kurt Busch in this range if you decide to not go with a lap leader. An early lap leader. I should rephrase that, an early lap leader, because I also think that somebody like Truex can get up to the front pretty quick. And then before the end of stage one of the drivers and it was starting 15th on back is now your lap leader. I think that's quite viable too.
Yeah, I feel more confident about Byron too, just with how strong not only he has been this year. I mean, he's taken an incredible leap from the first couple years of him running in Cup, which has been really exciting to see. But he's also with Hendrick. I mean, we've seen how good Hendrick is on the 1.5s. I definitely would not play William Byron and Keselowski together. But if you're taking that early lap leader narrative, those would be the two drivers that I would probably play one of them and pair them with some of those guys who you think might take over later in the race. A guy I do like is Kyle Busch this week. He's $8,600. I can't remember the last time Kyle Busch has ever been this cheap. Again, I don't know if he's going to lead you those laps, but we've seen him run consistently well. He's in the same equipment as Hamlin and Truex, so we know they're not that far off. We know that he hasn't lost any talent as a driver. He'll be running the Kansas truck race, the day before, so maybe that helps him a little bit for the Cup race. Maybe some additional practice, more or less knowing how the track potentially might change. That might help him a little bit. But I think Almirola is just way too expensive there. Stenhouse is at $8,200. I can't believe Ricky Stenhouse has got that much of a price increase there. And Christopher Bell starts 8th. I think Bell's an interesting play, very similar to Kyle Busch. I just think that, I don't know, maybe to me, I think Busch might have a little bit more upside of the potential to lead laps, although I don't feel too confident in either of them leading laps. But I can see Busch and Bell maintaining their position or even moving forward a couple spots, which at that price I think is really all you need. But what about you? What were your thoughts when you initially saw Ricky Stenhouse there at $8,200?
I wish he was cheaper. If he was cheaper, I'd play him. Right at that price, it's right. It's definitely too expensive, but in this price range, again, he's been racing really well this year, and maybe that's the price that he's at now. He's had a really good season, and his price has continually gone up. But I'm much more interested in Bell, and I like Busch, Kyle Busch. The price, like you said, he's very cheap compared to what he usually is, but I like Bella better than Busch. Christopher Bell has been underpriced the vast majority of this season, and he's when he's racing well, he's getting a top 10 every time. And he always starts high, but he always gets you that top 10 in the 8K, high 7K range where they've been pricing him. I think it's worth it. I've played a lot of Christopher Bell. I said this on a previous video as well, and it's really has not disappointed me this far. So I like Christopher Bell this week, and I think that with drivers like McDowell, DiBenedetto, Austin Dillon starting ahead of him, I think he could pass them pretty early. And I do think that he and Busch might have a dominator upside. I think both of them could get up there. And if they get up to the top 3 or 4 pretty quickly, and then, you get a couple laps in and they're pushing on Keselowski, Byron, or maybe even Harvick or whoever took over the lead early, I think there is more potential there than there normally is for those drivers that are starting in 8th and 9th to lead laps, because there are some drivers that really are unlikely to lead laps early on. And then once you get below 8K, this entire 7K range, I'm not a big fan of this week. They all just start too high for me. And Eric Jones is all right, but again, I'd rather have Bell at 8,000 than Eric Jones at 7,800. So it's just a little bit of a tough pill for me to swallow.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I think, ironically, if you watched our truck series video, we kind of had the same thought process there. There was kind of like an entire price range of guys where it's like, hey, if I just look at this range, above it or below it, I think that there's better plays than, kind of the price range in the middle. And I think it's the same thing here. I'm not crazy about any of the 7K drivers, and I'm probably going to exclude them from my player pool. I might have a little bit of Eric Jones just because of where he starts, but like you said, I'd much rather just pay up an extra $200 for Christopher Bell. I think that upside is huge. But if I skip down to the 6K range, this is where things get interesting. I think Austin Cindric is way too cheap at $6,700. Starting base. I think he is starting last. Starting 38th gives you plenty of PD upside. He's in Penske equipment. He's probably not going to get much higher than like 15th, but still, that's a ton of place differential points. And at $6,700, that's a great return on your value. Same with Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez. Like Ross Chastain hasn't been great, but he hasn't been terrible either. And he's in the same equipment as Kurt Busch. Yeah, he's cheap. I feel, more confident about him running well. I also like Daniel Suarez a lot. We've basically have seen this as it's a good car. I mean, it's the same equipment almost as Austin Dillon and Tyler Reddick, at RCR. So he's been having a career year. So I really like Cindric, Chastain, and Suarez. I think Buescher can kind of be thrown in that equation too. But I think Cindric by far is the best play out of this range. But and then I don't have too much interest to Reddick or Briscoe there. But do you feel as high about Ross Chastain as I do, or do you think Cindric and Suarez are the go-to plays here?
Cindric and Suarez for me. Chastain I don't mind him at that price, but I mean, he's been starting 24th and about $6,500 the whole year. And I think that's just where we've settled on Ross Chastain. But Austin Cindric was costing you 8,500 or so, somewhere around that range for all the other races that he was starting. He was starting last. I know Matt Mills is in 39th, but he's basically starting last. And there's no way he doesn't get up in the top 25 if he runs clean. There's absolutely no way. So it's almost just free points sitting there for 6,700. I love that. I'll take that all day long. And then Daniel Suarez, where I was saying that Ricky Stenhouse was just, I wish he was cheaper. These have been two very similar drivers this year that are having really, really good seasons and are running really well. And Daniel Suarez has pretty much had the very similar upside as Stenhouse. Maybe Stenhouse is slightly better, but not $2,000 better. So I love this the Suarez play this week, as I do a lot of weeks. I really think this team has surprised a lot of people, and I'm surprised that the pricing hasn't shown and caught up to that yet. And then I don't really like anybody else until we get all the way down to the bottom to Anthony Alfredo, who I normally am getting on Andrew because he's been playing a lot of Alfredo this year, and it has not paid off. And now I am looking at Alfredo at min price, and I cannot believe my eyes, because Alfredo could definitely run around and get 22nd. And if he runs around and gets the same spot that he's starting at, and he gets a top 25 for $4,500, that is saving you so much cash, and you could push up out of that 7K range that we don't like and get into a 9K range, 9K driver that we do like, or it might bump you up from a 9K driver all the way up to somebody like Larson, Hamlin, Logano that are definitely going to score you a ton of points. So I don't know. I have been off Alfredo all year, but this is awful tempting. I am going to have a really hard time not playing a lot of Alfredo this week, even though I know it's extremely risky and he could easily crash and get dead last. But on the flip side, I could definitely see him paying off $4,500, and then you're getting another stud in your line that could score a ton of points. You're giving yourself a better chance of getting a dominator and a place differential driver in your line that could just really, really pay off. So I actually have, I would say, medium interest in Alfredo, and it might be cautiously high interest because the price tag, I am normally not high on Alfredo, but for that price tag, I can't get over it. I just can't stop looking at it.
Yeah, when I first initially saw pricing came out, and I was, just casually scrolling through First Take, trying to figure out, who was priced where, I couldn't believe it because I just kept scrolling down, and I was like, "Where is Alfredo?" And I was like, "Did they forget to put him in?" And lo and behold, he's the cheapest play on the slate. And yeah, like Coop said, I've been playing a lot of Alfredo this year. It has not been working out for me the times that I have been playing him. And I was playing him starting, way more expensive than this, starting, further back, but sometimes not that much further back. So it's interesting. I don't know. Do you think Alfredo's going to be high owned this week?
People might forget to scroll that low. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to do with Alfredo. I mean, if I'm building multiple lines, I'll have some ownership, because if he can maintain his spot, even if he finishes 25th, I think that'll score you enough points, especially with the salary relief that it gets you. Because if you can increase the number of dominators in your lineup and increase the chance of nailing, who those main dominators are, then it doesn't really matter who your punt play is. Like, oh, is an Anthony Alfredo gonna score significantly more points than maybe a Justin Haley or a Corey LaJoie? I don't know, maybe not. But if that's the case, then it really doesn't matter, too much if Alfredo, gets outscored by maybe 2 or 3 points. If it allows you to get, a dominator who's going to just rack off, laps led and fast laps and just carry your line. So Alfredo's definitely, a GPP, maybe a risky play, because if he wrecks, I mean, it's going to hurt your line. But even then, if you get those dominators right, that might make up for him, having a bad day. So I don't know. Alfredo's left a negative, taste in my mouth this year. So I'm probably not as high on him as you are, but I was shocked that he was priced this low. And basically from 5,800 down, there's really no one I really like. Maybe Justin Haley at $5,100, but I'm almost more inclined to play Anthony Alfredo. Like, Alfredo's in the same equipment as Michael McDowell, and Michael McDowell is a playoff driver right now. So Michael McDowell is a better driver than Alfredo, but Alfredo is not going to have a mechanical failure. Everyone above him, there's a chance of them having a mechanical failure just because of their equipment that they're in. So it'll be interesting to see what Alfredo does, and he really does open up a lot of opportunities for your line. So do you have any other final thoughts, Coop, before we wrap up the Buschy McBusch 400?
I mean, like you said, I just don't see Alfredo falling behind any of those drivers. He consistently starts 26th to 30th and finishes 22nd to 26th, so he generally moves up 4 spots if he doesn't get in a wreck or get caught up in something. I mean, I just don't see how he doesn't pay off if he could he could sneak up 3 spots, get a top 20, and then he's mid price and we all look stupid for not playing him. So I don't know. I'm going to have a lot of him. I'm not going to like it, and I'm going to be really nervous going into the race because I've been low on him all year, but I just can't get over that he's min price. So I'm going to have a lot of Alfredo this weekend, and if it bites me, then never again, but we'll figure it out at that point.
Yeah, we'll you'll be able to see our reaction on next week's video when we talk about, did the Alfredo play work or not. But if you made it this far, obviously you're a NASCAR DFS fan, and obviously you appreciate the content that Coop, myself, and Rich, who isn't here this week, are putting out. So liking this video, commenting, and even subscribing really means a lot to us. We're a growing channel. We're about 96 subscribers right now. We just started doing this earlier this year. We really love to get over that 100 subscriber mark. So any support you guys can give us is greatly appreciated. But that's going to do it for Kansas. Best of luck to everybody making lineups this weekend for the Truck Series and the Cup Series. And I hope you guys all win some money, and we'll catch you next week.
Good luck this week.